The sound sliced through the cozy hum of the Small Delights bakery like an emergency alarm. Amelia Davis felt every pair of eyes turn, every conversation halt, every silent judgment form. The shame was a physical heat, crawling up her neck, burning her cheeks. "Try it again?" The cashier, a bored teenager with a nose ring, suggested, her impatience bordering on contempt. Amelia's hands trembled as she swiped the card again. The plastic felt flimsy, fraudulent, declined. "Maybe you have another one?" The cashier's voice was louder now, performative, ensuring everyone in the growing line was part of the spectacle. Behind Amelia, the queue of 5 had morphed into a jury of 500. "If she didn't have the money, why did she even order the cake?" a woman in a power suit whispered, not nearly as quietly as she thought. "People like that always think they'll get away with it," a man in a crisp shirt muttered, checking his watch with theatrical irritation. The cake, a simple chocolate round with modest frosting, $24.99, sat on the counter in its plain white box. It was for Grandma Rose's 72nd birthday. Rose, who was at home waiting, always so grateful for everything, never asking for anything, deserving at least this one small joy. Tears burned behind Amelia's eyes. The humiliation burned hotter. She was about to give up, to abandon the cake, flee the bakery she'd frequented for every special occasion, and never return, when a voice cut through the tension. It was unexpectedly calm, deep, and steady. "She's with me." Amelia turned, and she saw him. He was tall, maybe in his late 20s, with features that belonged on magazine covers, a sharp jawline, eyes the color of warm amber that held a startling intelligence, and dark brown hair that was perfectly, artfully disheveled. He wore a gray cashmere sweater that was clearly expensive, but worn with the casual air of someone who had never once considered a price tag. She recognized him. He'd been in the bakery 10 minutes earlier, looking lost in the gluten-free section like a tourist in a foreign country. He had been staring at 2 different loaves of bread with genuine confusion when she, guided by an instinct to help, had approached. "Looking for something specific?" she'd asked. "Ah, yes. My grandmother. She has restrictions. Gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free. Doctors love to take all the joy out of old age, apparently." He'd said it with a dry humor that was laced with obvious affection. Amelia had laughed. "My grandma has restrictions too. This one." She had pointed to an almond flour loaf studded with dark chocolate. "Is gluten-free, sweetened with erythritol, and made with coconut butter. And it's actually delicious. A rare find." "Are you a nutritionist?" "A physical therapist." "Was. I specialized in geriatrics. I took care of my grandmother for years and learned everything I could." "She was lucky to have you," he'd said, with a sincerity that caught her off guard. "Thank you. Seriously. Trying to buy things for her makes me feel completely useless." "You're not," she'd replied. "The fact that you're here, trying, that matters more than you think." There had been a moment, a flicker, almost nothing, where his amber eyes lingered on hers with something that looked like surprise, recognition. Then he'd smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile, and gone to pay. What a kind man, Amelia had thought, before promptly forgetting him. Until now. "Sorry, darling," he said, stepping forward with the easy confidence of a man who owned the ground he walked on. "I must have given you the wrong card this morning." He held out his hand. Amelia stared, her mind reeling. They didn't know each other. They weren't a couple. He was lying. But then his fingers closed around hers, a gentle but firm grip that sent a silent message. "Trust me. I'm saving you." Something in his touch, in the unwavering sincerity of those amber eyes, made her play along. I'm sorry. I'm so distracted today." "It's all right," he interrupted softly, guiding her gently to the side as he stepped up to the counter. "Hers and mine, please." He handed over a black card, not a regular one, but an Amex Centurion, the kind Amelia had only ever seen in articles about the ultra-rich. The transaction was approved in an instant. The whispers in the line shifted from judgment to speculation. "Who is he?" "Look at that card." The cashier handed over their bags, and he guided Amelia out of the shop, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. The gesture felt impossibly natural, but it sent a tingle of electricity through the thin fabric of her jacket. Outside, on the crisp October sidewalk littered with fallen leaves, he finally let her go. "I'm sorry about that in there," he said, his voice soft and devoid of condescension. "You didn't deserve to be humiliated." "I'll pay you back," Amelia said immediately, her wounded pride still throbbing. "I swear, as soon as I get a job." Amelia. The fact that he knew her name stopped her. She must have looked confused, because he explained, "I heard the cashier say it, and about the job." He pulled a business card from his pocket. The paper was thick, cream-colored, with embossed gold lettering, Caspian Pembroke, CEO, Pembroke Holdings. Below it was an office address in Manhattan that Amelia recognized as one of the most expensive buildings in the city. "You said you took care of the elderly, that you were a specialist." "I am," Amelia corrected, a sliver of hope cutting through her shame. "But no one hires without years of institutional experience. It doesn't matter how much you know in practice." "I do," Caspian said simply. "My grandmother needs care, and in 6 months, you're the first person who has actually seemed to understand what she needs, not just technically, but humanly." He flipped the card over and wrote a different address on the back, not an office, but a residence on the Upper East Side. "Come tomorrow, 10 a.m. Please, just consider it." Amelia looked from the card, to him, to the cake in her hands. The cake he'd paid for, the humiliation he'd erased, the job offer that could change everything. "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked, her voice a whisper. "For a stranger?" Caspian considered the question with a seriousness she didn't expect. "Because sometimes strangers understand better than anyone, and because—" He hesitated, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his perfect features. "Because my grandmother is too lonely, and I don't want to see someone I love feel invisible anymore. You helped a stranger in there today without expecting anything in return. Let me do the same." Before Amelia could respond, he gave a small nod and walked toward a black Mercedes parked at the corner, leaving her on the sidewalk. She was holding a birthday cake and a business card, and her heart was hammering in a way that made no sense at all. That night, when Rose blew out the single candle on her cake, Amelia looked at the two women she loved more than anything and thought, tomorrow. Maybe, just maybe, everything changes. The wrought iron gates probably cost more than Amelia's entire apartment building. They guarded a mansion that shouldn't exist outside of a period drama, a sprawling stone edifice that screamed generations of old money. Amelia checked the address on Caspian's card for the 3rd time. She checked Google Maps twice. This couldn't be right. The estate had gardens that stretched beyond sight and fountains that belonged at Versailles. A disembodied voice crackled from an intercom. "May I help you?" I have a meeting with Caspian Pembroke." It came out as a question. She was still half convinced yesterday had been a bizarre, elaborate dream. "Name?" "Amelia Davis." A pause, then, yes. Mr. Pembroke is expecting you. Please come in." The gates began to swing open, slow and dramatic, like curtains revealing a stage. Amelia took a deep breath and walked through. What have I gotten myself into? She walked up the circular driveway, because of course she walked. The cab ride here had already cost half of what little cash she had left. Caspian's Mercedes was parked next to a vintage Bentley and something that might have been a Rolls-Royce. The front door opened before she could knock. It wasn't a butler. It was Caspian. He was barefoot, dressed in faded jeans and a gray Henley that clung to his frame. His hair was slightly messy, as if he'd just run his hands through it, and he was smiling in a way that made something warm unfurl in Amelia's stomach. "You came." He sounded genuinely relieved. I kind of had to, Amelia admitted, clutching her worn handbag. The job offer. I really need a job. Right. Of course, come in. He stepped aside, and Amelia entered a world of obscene grandeur. The foyer had 20-foot ceilings and a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than her entire college education. A sweeping double staircase looked like it had been stolen from the set of Cinderella. It's too big, Caspian said suddenly. Amelia turned. What? The house. It's ridiculously big. My parents built it to, I don't know, prove something. But now it's just me and my grandmother, Elizabeth. We use maybe 8 of the 40 rooms. The self-deprecation in his voice humanized the absurdity of it all. 40 rooms, Amelia repeated faintly. Caspian let out a real, unpracticed laugh. Come on, I'll introduce you to the real reason you're here. Elizabeth Pembroke was not what Amelia expected. She was in the library, a magnificent 2-story room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a rolling ladder straight out of Beauty and the Beast. Dressed in a simple cashmere twin set, she sat in a plush reading chair, a copy of Pride and Prejudice resting in her lap. Grandma, Caspian said softly. This is Amelia Davis. She's here for the interview. Elizabeth lowered the book. Her eyes, the same amber as Caspian's, but softened by age and wisdom, studied Amelia with an intensity that was both unnerving and strangely maternal. You're tiny, Elizabeth finally said. Amelia blinked. I'm sorry? Tiny. Frail. Caspian said you're a physical therapist, but you look like a strong wind would blow you over. Grandma, Caspian started, mortified. I'm strong, Amelia interrupted, her chin lifting. Stronger than I look. I took care of my grandmother for years, helped her recover after a stroke. I learned every exercise, every technique, and she's thriving today, thanks to God and a lot of hard work. She smiled. My grandma Rose says I'm stubborn as a mule. I think it's a compliment. Rose? Elizabeth's expression brightened. Your grandmother's name is Rose? Yes, ma'am. Rose Davis. She's 72 and the wittiest woman you'll ever meet. I'd love to meet her, Elizabeth said with obvious sincerity. Women named Rose are always special. My best friend growing up was named Rose. A shadow of memory crossed her face. She passed 10 years ago. I still miss her every day. A respectful silence fell. Then Elizabeth smiled, a warm, genuine smile that transformed her face. You're hired. Grandma, we can't just, Caspian protested. I can and I did. She stays. Now, Amelia, my dear, do you play chess? 3 hours later, Amelia had played chess with Elizabeth and lost spectacularly. Listened to stories about the war. He was a pilot, I was a Red Cross volunteer, utterly cliché but perfect, and discovered that this 82-year-old woman was sharper than most people half her age. So? Caspian asked when they were finally alone in the hallway, his voice low. Do you accept? The salary is $75,000 a year, room and board included, full benefits. You'd live here during the week. It was more money than Amelia had ever dreamed of. It was a solution to so many problems. It was impossible. Why me? She finally asked. You could hire anyone, professionals with decades of experience. Whom she hates, Caspian cut in gently. Amelia, I've had 15 nurses in the last 6 months, all perfect on paper. All of them made my grandmother feel like a task, not a person. Then you show up, and in 3 hours, she's laughing and telling stories I haven't heard in months. He stepped a little closer. I don't need perfection on paper. I need someone who sees my grandmother as human, and you do that naturally. Amelia looked at him, at the raw sincerity in his eyes, at the fierce love he so clearly had for his grandmother. Yes, she whispered, I accept. The smile that lit up Caspian's face was transformative. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. As she left, Caspian insisted his driver take her home. She glanced back to see him waving from the doorway. I think I just changed my entire life, she thought, and I don't know if I'm terrified or thrilled. When she got home and told her mother, Sarah, and Grandma Rose, their reactions were exactly as expected. Sarah: $75,000 a year? Amelia, that changes everything. Rose: Is he handsome? Tell me he's handsome. Amelia blushed. Grandma: It's a legitimate question. You'll be living with him, with his grandmother. I'll be taking care of his grandmother. Who lives with him? In the same house? Rose grinned, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. Interesting. Later that night, lying in bed, Amelia thought about Caspian's smile and his quiet kindness. And if her heart beat a little faster, if she dreamed of amber eyes and transformative smiles, well, she could pretend it was just excitement about the new job. For now. Amelia's first dinner at the Pembroke mansion was surreal. She was seated in a dining room that could host 20, but held only 3, on a chair that probably cost more than her entire living room sofa, eating food a private chef had prepared. A private chef. She was trying very hard not to look completely out of place. You're very quiet, Elizabeth observed, cutting into her salmon with elegant precision. Thinking of running away yet? Amelia nearly choked on her wine, which Caspian had poured, saying, just a little to relax. No, definitely not. It's just, this is all very excessive, Caspian suggested, not looking offended. Unnecessary? Ridiculously ostentatious? I was going to say different, Amelia corrected diplomatically. But yes, maybe a little large for 3 people. Finally, Elizabeth clapped her hands delicately. Someone who speaks the truth. Caspian, darling, I've been telling you for years. I know, Grandma, but selling the house would be liberating, Elizabeth finished for him. But he's sentimental. He grew up here, has memories, even if most of them are of being lonely. The observation hung in the air, heavy and revealing. Caspian went still, a flicker of pain crossing his face before it vanished behind a polite mask. Amelia, who had spent years reading her own grandmother's expressions to detect discomfort, saw it. She instinctively changed the subject. Grandma Rose called me today. She wants to know if Elizabeth would like to chat on the phone sometime. She said, women of 72 and 82 have a lot to talk about regarding how the world used to be better. It worked. Elizabeth laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. Your grandmother sounds wonderful. Yes, I'd love that. When? Anytime. She's always available. Retired and, in her words, bored because her granddaughter now lives in a fancy mansion. You told your family? Caspian asked, rejoining the conversation, obvious gratitude in his eyes for Amelia's rescue. Of course. My mom almost fainted at the salary. My grandmother wants to know if you have any handsome single friends. Amelia felt a blush creep up her neck. She's unfiltered. I like her already, Elizabeth declared. And yes, bring her to visit. Bring them both. This house needs more life, more laughter, more warmth, Caspian completed softly, looking at Amelia in a way that made her stomach do a little flip. More warmth. The rest of the dinner flowed easily. Elizabeth told stories about when the mansion was built, the 1960s, new money trying to look like old money, utterly ridiculous, about her late husband, Henry. He hated this house too, preferred our little cottage on the lake. About raising Caspian, the most serious little boy I ever met, always worrying, always taking care of me, even when he should have been playing. After dinner, as Amelia helped Elizabeth to her room, Caspian was waiting in the hallway when she emerged. She loves you, he said. Already. Amelia smiled. She barely knows me. Grandma is an excellent judge of character, always has been. And she sees in you what I saw. He stopped, as if realizing he was about to reveal too much. Competence, he finished quickly. Professionalism. But the way he averted his gaze, The way the tips of his ears turned faintly pink told her that wasn't what he'd meant to say. "Caspian," Amelia said before she could stop herself. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you okay? Earlier, at dinner, when your grandmother mentioned loneliness." He went very still, for so long that Amelia thought she'd crossed a line. Then, his voice was a low rasp. "My parents are on a cruise, again, for the 3rd year in a row. They call every couple of months, maybe. Ask about the business, never about me. Never about Grandma. And I—" His voice broke, just slightly. "I grew up in this enormous house with only her. The best years were when she was strong, active, teaching me things. Now, taking care of her, I watch her slowly, not fade, but grow more fragile. And it terrifies me." Tears welled in his eyes. Without thinking, Amelia reached out and took his hand. "She's not fading. Elizabeth is one of the most alive people I've ever met. Yes, she's getting older, but that doesn't mean she's lost. It means she needs someone who understands that every day is precious. And you understand that. It's why you hired me." Caspian looked down at her hand on his, then up at her face. "Thank you," he whispered, "for understanding and for being here." There was a moment, suspended, charged, where they stood too close, looking at each other in a way that transcended professionalism. Then Caspian cleared his throat and took a step back. "You must be tired. Your room is on the 2nd floor, 3rd door on the right." "If you need anything, I'll be fine," Amelia assured him, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "Good night, Caspian." "Good night, Amelia." Later, in her room, which was larger than her entire living room back home, with a king-sized bed and an ensuite bathroom with a soaking tub, Amelia couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, processing the day, the mansion, Elizabeth, Caspian, especially Caspian, the raw vulnerability when he spoke of his loneliness. "No," she told herself firmly. "You are here to work, to care for Elizabeth, not to develop feelings for her billionaire grandson." But when she finally drifted off, she dreamt of amber eyes and smiles that transformed entire faces. And when she woke in the morning, she found a note slipped under her door. "Breakfast at 8. Grandma wants pancakes. Do you know how to make them? If not, we can learn together. Caspian." Amelia held the note as if it were a treasure and smiled in a way that had nothing to do with work at all. Amelia found Caspian in the library at 11 o'clock at night. She'd gone downstairs for a glass of water when she saw a sliver of light bleeding from under the massive library doors. Curiosity won. She peeked inside, and there he was, barefoot in sweatpants and a t-shirt, curled up in a worn leather armchair that seemed molded to his frame, completely absorbed in a thick book. The scene was so human, so different from the CEO in perfect suits she'd seen in the photos online when she'd researched him. Not that she'd researched him much, just basic due diligence. "Are you going to stand there spying, or are you coming in?" His voice made her jump. He hadn't even looked up from his book. Sorry," Amelia said, pushing the door open fully, feeling like a child caught doing something wrong. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not. I was just needing a break." He finally looked up, and Amelia saw the exhaustion etched around his eyes. It wasn't physical tiredness. It was a deep, emotional weariness. Bad meetings. Just long ones, and filled with people telling me what they think I want to hear, instead of what I need to hear. He closed the book. Amelia caught the title, The Picture of Dorian Gray. "You read Oscar Wilde at 11 o'clock at night?" She couldn't help but ask. A small, self-conscious smile touched his lips. "When I need to be reminded that youth and beauty are temporary, but art and kindness endure? Yes." Profound for a Tuesday night. Or desperate. Take your pick. A comfortable silence settled between them. Then Amelia moved, before she could overthink it, and sat in the armchair opposite him. "May I?" "Please," Caspian gestured around the vast room. "The library is for everyone. Grandma insists. She says books that aren't read are just sad, expensive decorations." "Your grandmother is a wise woman." "She is." A pause. "Do you read?" "When I have time. Lately, not so much, but—" Amelia scanned the shelves. There were thousands of books here. My God, this is an entire library. 4 generations of Pembrokes accumulating. There are first editions, classics, contemporary, poetry, non-fiction, everything. Have you read them all? Maybe a quarter of them. I'm working on it, very slowly. Caspian stood, walking to a specific shelf. Favorites? Depends on the mood. When I'm happy, I read Austen. When I'm sad, I read Wilde or Bronte. When I'm angry, I read Nietzsche. And when you're lonely? Amelia asked softly. Caspian froze, his hand resting on the spine of a book. I read letters, old correspondences between writers, because it reminds me that loneliness is universal. Even geniuses felt it. The admission was so raw it made Amelia's chest ache. What's your favorite? Caspian asked suddenly, turning back to her. Book. What's your absolute favorite? Amelia thought for a moment. Persuasion, by Jane Austen. Ah, The Second Chance. The Second Chance, Amelia confirmed. About people who lost each other and found their way back. About a love that waits. You're an optimist, Caspian observed, but he was smiling. Or a realist. Sometimes the best things are the ones you almost let get away. There was a moment where they just looked at each other, across the dimly lit library, surrounded by thousands of stories of love and loss and everything in between. Then Caspian broke eye contact, pulling a book from the shelf. Here, read this. It was a beautifully bound copy of Persuasion. A first edition, Amelia realized with a jolt. I can't take this, it's... Books are meant to be read, not preserved, Caspian quoted his grandmother. And maybe, when you're done, you can tell me why it means so much to you. Why? Because I want to understand. I want to understand you. The confession hung in the air. Amelia took the book, her hands trembling slightly. Okay, but only if you lend me your favorite, too. Caspian hesitated, then pulled a slim volume from another shelf. Letters to a Young Poet, by Rilke. It's not a novel. It's about solitude, and creation, and finding meaning. But it's mine. I'll take care of it as if it were treasure, Amelia promised. I know you will. They stood there, each holding a piece of the other's soul, bound in leather and paper. It was intimate in a way a kiss couldn't be. Amelia returned to her room, clutching both books to her chest like a shield. She opened Letters to a Young Poet, and on the first page, she saw it. Masculine handwriting in faded blue ink. To Caspian, on your 16th. When you feel lost, remember, solitude is where art is born, but you don't have to live there forever. With love, Grandma Elizabeth. Amelia felt tears burn her eyes. This book was precious, and he had lent it to her. She fell asleep reading Rilke, and she dreamt of libraries and men who read about loneliness at 11 at night because they didn't know how to ask for company. When she woke, there was another note under her door. Thank you for last night. The conversation was more therapeutic than 6 months of board meetings. Caspian Amelia saved the note, along with the first one. She was starting a collection of small moments that meant more than they should. The storm arrived without warning, a typical violent October squall. Amelia was in her room at 10 o'clock at night when the first clap of thunder boomed, so loud it rattled the windows. She jumped, her heart racing. She had always hated storms. She tried to distract herself, picking up Caspian's book, but the words blurred as another thunderclap exploded, followed by a flash of lightning that lit up the entire room. And then, Blackout. The power died, plunging the mansion into absolute darkness. Amelia held her breath, trying not to panic, but the rooms here were so large, so dark, and she was alone, and a knock on her door. "Amelia?" Caspian's voice. "Are you okay?" Amelia opened the door, trying to look calmer than she felt. Caspian stood there with a flashlight, his hair damp. "I'm fine," she lied. "Just wasn't expecting the blackout. It happens sometimes. The generators will kick in a few minutes, but I thought—" He hesitated. "I thought you might not want to be alone in the dark." The consideration warmed something in Amelia's chest. "Is your grandmother okay?" "Sleeping like a stone. Storms never bother her. But you—" His eyes scanned her, seeing more than she wanted them to. "You don't like storms." "It's not a fear," Amelia defended herself weakly. "It's just a strong preference against them." Caspian smiled. "Right. A strong preference. Come on. I know a better place to wait for the generators." He guided her, a gentle hand on her back again, that touch that was becoming so familiar, down the dark hallways to a cozy sitting room. It was smaller than the main one, with a fireplace already crackling and windows overlooking the garden where rain lashed violently. "I was in here when it started," Caspian explained. "I lit the fire because I knew the power would go. It happens every time a storm is this bad." He gestured to a tray on the coffee table. "I made hot chocolate. Before you ask, yes, I know how to make hot chocolate. Grandma taught me. It's one of about 5 things I know how to cook." They sat on separate sofas, the fire crackling between them, the hot chocolate warming their hands. Amelia expected awkwardness, but instead, there was comfort. "Want to know something embarrassing?" Caspian said after a few minutes of comfortable silence. "Of course. I don't like storms either, for completely irrational, childish reasons." Amelia raised an eyebrow. "Really? The billionaire CEO is afraid of thunder. When I was 8, I was alone during a storm like this one. My parents were somewhere, and I was here, in this giant house, with only a nanny who barely spoke English and didn't understand why I was terrified." He took a sip of chocolate. "Lightning hit a tree in the front garden. It burst into flames, and I thought, ridiculously, childishly, that the house was going to catch fire and I was going to die alone." "Caspian," Amelia whispered. "I know, ridiculous, but ever since—" He gestured vaguely. "Storms remind me of being alone when I needed someone." "It's not ridiculous," Amelia said firmly. "You were a child. Children shouldn't be alone during scary things." "You're right. But I was. A lot." A heavy silence fell. Then Amelia stood, moved to his sofa, and sat beside him, not touching, but close. "Well, you're not alone now." Caspian looked at her, really looked at her, with an intensity that stole the air from her lungs. "No," he said softly. "I'm not." Thunder boomed again. This time they both jumped slightly, then laughed at the synchronicity. And somehow they were closer, shoulders touching, a shared warmth. "Thank you," Caspian said softly, "for being here, for not judging me." "Thank you for getting me," Amelia replied, "for not leaving me alone in the dark." They stayed like that, sitting on the sofa as the storm raged outside, talking about everything and nothing, about childhoods and fears and dreams they'd almost given up on. The generators finally kicked on at 2 in the morning. The lights flickered back to life, breaking the spell. Caspian cleared his throat, creating a little distance. "You should get back to bed. Elizabeth wakes up early." "Right. Yes." Amelia stood, feeling the cold where his warmth had been. "Thank you for everything." "Always," Caspian said, and there was a promise in that single word that made her heart race. Amelia was almost at the door when he called out, "Amelia." She turned. "Yes?" "You make storms less scary." She smiled, a small but genuine smile. "You do too." When she got back to her room, she found a cozy blanket on her bed that definitely hadn't been there before, with a note attached. "For the next storm, or any cold night, or whenever you need some comfort. Caspian." Amelia wrapped herself in the blanket, which smelled faintly of his cologne, and realized, "I'm falling." The thought was clear in her mind. She was falling, slowly and terrifyingly, for a man who read Rilke at midnight and made hot chocolate during storms, and she had no idea how to stop, or if she even wanted to. "Caspian hasn't talked about his feelings since he was 14, Elizabeth said casually, as if she were commenting on the weather. Amelia was helping her with her morning mobility exercises when she said it. Amelia paused mid-stretch. "What happened when he was 14? She asked. Elizabeth looked out the window. In the garden below, Caspian was pacing back and forth on the phone, a familiar tension in his shoulders. "He asked his parents to come home from their cruise," Elizabeth explained. "He was having nightmares, trouble at school, clearly depressed. Do you know what they said?" Amelia shook her head, her stomach tightening. Elizabeth's lips thinned. "They said he was being dramatic, that he needed to grow up." They came back 4 months later, for another party. Caspian never asked for anything again. The revelation stayed with Amelia all day. She watched Caspian differently now, seeing the layers of protection he'd built. During lunch, Caspian mentioned an upcoming business trip. 2 days in Boston, he announced. Meetings with investors. I leave tomorrow morning. He looked at Elizabeth, but his eyes flickered to Amelia as he asked, "Will you be all right without me?" "I have the best caregiver in the world," Elizabeth said warmly. "I'll be perfectly fine. Besides, Amelia and I are planning an Audrey Hepburn movie marathon. You'd be bored." "Probably," Caspian agreed, smiling. But there was something in his eyes, a reluctance. After lunch, Amelia found him in his office, packing his laptop. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. "Of course," he said, giving her his full attention. "Your grandmother told me about when you were 14. Caspian went very still. "She shouldn't have. She worries about you," Amelia interrupted gently. "And I just wanted to say, if you ever need to talk about anything, I'll listen. No judgment. No thinking you're being dramatic." A vulnerable look crossed his face. "Thank you, but I'm good at handling things on my own." "No one should have to handle things on their own," Amelia said softly, "even when we've learned how." That night, Amelia woke at 2 in the morning to a sound. It wasn't a storm this time. It was softer. Crying? She got up, pulling on her robe, and followed the sound. It led her to Caspian's door, which was slightly ajar. She could hear it clearly now. Not loud, but unmistakable. Muffled sobs. Her first instinct was to knock, to go in, to comfort him. But then she remembered what Elizabeth had said. Caspian hasn't talked about his feelings. If she went in, she would expose him, force him to admit a vulnerability he'd spent years hiding. So Amelia just stood there, on the other side of the door. Her hand was raised to knock, but she didn't. She just stayed, a silent witness. Her presence a quiet message. "I'm here. You're not alone, even if you can't let me in yet." The thought was a promise in her mind. After minutes that felt like hours, the crying stopped. Amelia heard him move, likely composing himself. She backed away quickly, returning to her room before he could open the door and see her. But she didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, her heart breaking for the man who had learned at 14 that asking for help was a weakness. The next morning, Caspian was as impeccable as ever, a perfectly tailored gray suit, hair combed, no sign of the night before. "Good morning," He greeted them at breakfast. "Sleep well?" "Perfectly," Elizabeth replied. Amelia hesitated, then asked, "Did you?" His eyes met hers, and for a split second there was a flicker of recognition, a silent acknowledgement. He knew. Somehow, he knew she had been there. "Better now," he said softly. "Much better now." When he left for Boston, Elizabeth took Amelia's hand. "You were outside his door last night." It wasn't a question. "I heard a noise," Amelia started. "And you stayed," Elizabeth finished. "You didn't invade, you didn't force, you just stayed. Thank you. For giving him something he's never had." "What's that?" Amelia asked. "A witness," Elizabeth explained. "Someone who cares enough to stay, but respects him enough not to push." Tears burned in Amelia's eyes. "I do care," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper, more than she should, so much more. "I know, my dear," Elizabeth smiled, "and soon he'll know it too." Amelia woke up feeling like her body was on fire. A fever so high her teeth were chattering, yet she was sweating through her pajamas. Her throat burned, her head pounded. When she tried to stand up to check on Elizabeth, it was 7 a.m., time for morning exercises. The room spun violently. She barely made it to the bathroom before she was sick. No, not now, she thought, her mind racing. Elizabeth needs me. Caspian's away. She dragged herself back to bed, her hands trembling as she reached for her phone. Who could she even call? Her mother, Sarah? No, she was at work. Rose? Her grandmother would panic. Should she call Caspian? No, he was in important meetings. Before she could decide, there was a knock on the door. "Amelia?" It was Elizabeth's voice, laced with concern. "It's 7:15. You're never late." Amelia tried to answer, but what came out was a pained groan. The door opened. Elizabeth came in, saw Amelia in bed, and immediately switched from elderly woman needing care to matriarch in command. "You're burning up," Elizabeth said, her cool hand on Amelia's forehead. "How long have you been like this?" "Woke up. Like this," Amelia managed to say through chattering teeth. "Okay, don't move," Elizabeth instructed. She left the room, and Amelia could hear her on the phone, her tone urgent. 15 minutes later, which felt like an eternity, the front door opened, followed by the sound of rapid footsteps. Then Caspian appeared in her doorway. He was still in his suit, his hair messy as if he'd been running, his face a mask of raw concern. "You were in Boston," Amelia said, confused. "I came back," he stated simply. He crossed the room and placed his hand on her forehead, his touch surprisingly gentle. "You're boiling. Grandma called, said you were sick. I canceled the meetings." "You didn't have to," Amelia started. "I had to," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He turned to Elizabeth, who was standing in the doorway. "Grandma, can you be okay on your own for a few hours?" "Caspian, I'm 82, not 182, Elizabeth replied with a small smile. "I can manage. You take care of her, like she takes care of me." Elizabeth then left, closing the door behind her. The next few hours passed in a feverish haze. Amelia drifted in and out of consciousness, but through it all, Caspian was there. He brought her water, coaxing her to take small sips. He placed cool cloths on her forehead. He held her hair back when she was sick again, acting as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You should be working," Amelia mumbled during a moment of lucidity. "I am working," Caspian replied, adjusting her pillows. "I'm taking care of the person who takes care of the person I love most in this world. This is important work." "I'll get you sick," she whispered. "I don't care," he said. "Caspian." "Shh, rest. I'm here," he insisted. And he was. He stayed through the afternoon and into the night. A doctor came. Caspian had called his private physician, diagnosed a severe flu, prescribed medication, and left. But Caspian stayed. He moved an armchair from the corner of the room to her bedside and worked quietly on his laptop, glancing up at her every few minutes. Checking, watching, caring. During the night, the fever finally broke. Amelia woke up, truly awake and lucid for the first time in hours. She saw Caspian asleep in the chair, his laptop closed in his lap, his head tilted at an angle that was sure to be painful later. He had changed out of his suit into a t-shirt and sweatpants. There were dark shadows under his eyes. He looked exhausted. And, she thought, absolutely beautiful. She didn't want to wake him, but when she tried to move, a soft groan escaped her lips. Caspian was awake instantly, alert as a soldier. "Are you okay? Do you need something?" he asked, his voice hoarse with sleep. I need the bathroom," Amelia admitted, blushing. "And you need a real bed. Your neck is going to be destroyed." "I'm staying," Caspian said firmly, "until you're completely better." "Why?" Amelia asked, the question that had been on her mind since the day in the bakery. "Why do you care so much?" Caspian looked at her for a long, intense moment, as if deciding something. Then he spoke. "Because when you're here, this house is a home. And when I thought of you being sick, alone, with no one to take care of you, I couldn't breathe. So I came back, and I'll stay as many nights as it takes until I'm sure you're okay." The confession hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. "Caspian," Amelia whispered. "No, not now," he said, standing up and offering his hand. "Right now, let's get you to the bathroom. Then more water. Then you sleep, and I'll watch. And tomorrow, when you're stronger, we can talk." But as he helped her, his arm firm around her waist, holding her as if she was something precious, Amelia knew. There was no talk that could change what was happening. They had crossed a line, and she didn't want to go back. 2 days later, Amelia was finally well enough to resume her duties with Elizabeth. That evening, however, it was Caspian who came home from the office with his wrist bandaged. "What happened?" Amelia asked immediately, her physical therapist instincts kicking in. She gently took his hand to examine it. "It's nothing," Caspian said, trying to pull away. "Caspian," she said, her tone firm, echoing the one he'd used with her days before. He sighed. "An argument with a partner. I hit the desk. Too hard. I might have sprained it." "You might have—" Amelia shook her head in disbelief. "Sit down. Now." She led him to the living room, sat him on the sofa, and carefully removed the makeshift bandage he'd clearly wrapped himself. His wrist was swollen and bruised. "This needs ice, proper compression. And you'll need to avoid using it for a few days," she instructed. "I have meetings," Caspian started to protest. "Which you'll conduct with your left hand, or you'll delegate," she countered. She went to get the first aid kit, returning with an ice pack and a proper compression bandage. As she worked, her touch professional and gentle, checking his range of motion, she could feel Caspian's eyes on her. "You're good at this," he observed quietly. "It's literally my job," she replied, her brow furrowed in concentration. "This is going to be sore for a few days. No more punching desks, Mr. Pembroke." "He made me angry," Caspian murmured. "The partner. He was suggesting we sell off a division that keeps 500 people employed because it wasn't profitable enough. As if people are just numbers on a spreadsheet." Amelia paused and looked up at him. "You didn't sell, did you?" "Obviously not," he said. "But the fight was intense. So you took your frustration out on the poor, innocent desk." "Apparently," he admitted, with a small, self-conscious smile. "It's not my finest quality." "You care too much," Amelia said softly, finishing the wrap. "About people, about doing the right thing. That's not a flaw, Caspian. It's rare." A quiet moment passed between them. Amelia was still holding his injured wrist, and Caspian's eyes were filled with an emotion that made her breath catch. "You took care of me," he said softly, "when I was sick. For days." "You took care of me first," Amelia reminded him. You canceled meetings. Because I couldn't stay away, he confessed, his voice raw. Because the thought of you needing something and me not being there made me physically ill. And I know. He ran his good hand through his hair. I know this complicates everything, that you work here, that this is probably inappropriate, but Caspian, Amelia said, placing a finger on his lips to quiet him, stop thinking for 1 minute, and just feel. She took his good hand and placed it over her heart, where he could feel it beating fast and erratic. Do you think it's just you feeling this? His eyes widened. Amelia. I took care of you because I wanted to, she said. Because the idea of you being hurt, even if it's just a sprained wrist from punching a desk, made me want to be here, caring for you, just like you did for me. The moment was suspended, charged with months of unspoken tension. Then Elizabeth appeared in the doorway. Are you two going to stare at each other forever? Or is someone going to have the courage to do something about all this sexual tension? She announced. Grandma! Caspian was mortified. Amelia covered her face, laughing despite her embarrassment. I'm old, not blind, Elizabeth continued, relentless. You two have been circling each other for weeks like stubborn magnets. Caspian, you canceled multi-million-dollar meetings to take care of her. Amelia, you blush every time he walks into a room. So for heaven's sake, do something about it, or I'm going to die of frustration before old age gets me. Elizabeth turned and left, leaving Caspian and Amelia in a stunned silence. She's not subtle, Amelia finally said. Never has been, Caspian agreed. He paused, then added, but she's not wrong. She's not? Amelia asked. About me, he clarified. About how I feel. About... He took a deep breath. Amelia, I don't know how to do this. Relationships. Vulnerability. Letting someone get close enough to hurt me. But with you, I want to try. Amelia's heart soared. You want to... try. Us. If you want to. No pressure. No expectations. Yes, she said, not letting him finish. Yes, I want to try. The smile that lit up his face was transformative. Yes? Yes, she confirmed. He moved closer, slowly, giving her time to back away. She didn't. When his lips finally touched hers, it was gentle. Questioning. Perfect. When they pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Caspian rested his forehead against hers. Worth punching the desk for, he murmured. Amelia laughed. You're an idiot. Your hand is going to hurt for days. I don't care one bit, he whispered back. As they kissed again, deeper this time, months of tension finally released. Neither of them noticed Elizabeth watching from the doorway with a satisfied smile. Finally, she whispered to herself. About damn time. It was Friday night, 2 weeks after their first kiss. Amelia sat in Elizabeth's favorite library chair, reading Emma aloud. Caspian was in his own armchair, pretending to work on his laptop, but he was really just watching Amelia. He watched the way she changed her voice for the different characters, the way she laughed at the funny parts, the way she unconsciously twisted a strand of hair around her finger when she was concentrating. Elizabeth was in her recliner, supposedly listening. But Caspian saw the moment her eyes closed, the moment her breathing became soft and even. She had fallen asleep. Amelia, lost in the story, hadn't noticed. Caspian stood up silently and walked over to Amelia, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. She stopped reading and looked up. She's asleep, he whispered, gesturing toward Elizabeth. Amelia looked over, saw the peacefully sleeping woman, and smiled. She always falls asleep in the middle of books, she whispered back. She says it's because my voice is as soothing as a lullaby. It is, Caspian agreed, and the warmth in his tone made Amelia blush. Amelia started to get up to wake Elizabeth, but Caspian stopped her. Let me get her, he said. Are you sure? Amelia asked, glancing at his still healing wrist. With your wrist? It's better, he assured her. And she's light. He bent down, sliding one arm under his grandmother's knees and the other behind her back, lifting her with a practiced ease. Elizabeth murmured something in her sleep but didn't wake. "Come on," Caspian said to Amelia. "Help make sure I don't trip in the hallway." They walked together, Caspian carrying Elizabeth, Amelia at his side, opening doors and turning on soft lights. The moment felt domestic, intimate, like family. In Elizabeth's room, Caspian gently laid her on the bed. Amelia removed the older woman's shoes, adjusted the blankets, and placed a soft kiss on her forehead. "Good night, Elizabeth," she whispered. When they stepped out, closing the door softly behind them, Caspian took Amelia's hand. "You're incredible with her," he said. "I love her," Amelia replied simply, "like family. I hope that's not—" "It's perfect," Caspian interrupted. "She loves you too. You're not just a caregiver, Amelia. You're part of us now." They walked back to the library to retrieve the forgotten book. The room was dimly lit, the fire still crackling, creating an undeniably romantic atmosphere.